This Ableton rack completely changed the game for me. I created it to quickly access every feature I would typically need on any new track. Over the years, this rack has saved me hundreds of hours, and today I'm giving it to you totally free. The free download link is in the description below, but first, let's look at it and see what it does. Oh, and be sure to stay until the very end of the video where I'm going to give you a bonus tip to speed your workflow up even more. But now let's dive into Ableton. This rack is called Launchpad, so I'm going to type Command F to bring up the search, type in Launchpad, and there it comes up. Just going to double click on that and load it up onto this track. Now this is the default view that it loads up with. You got the EQ window floating up above the audio rack down below. If you prefer a different view, I'll show you how to change it in just a minute. But for now, let's look at what's inside this rack. First up, we have an EQ, then a compressor, then a saturator, a limiter, and utility. These are the 5 audio racks that I use on every single new track, so to not have to bring them in one by one is a huge time saver. And next you'll notice that there's 8 knobs which I have programmed to touch all of the main features of each one of these audio effects that I need the most. Let's look at what each one does real quick. The low cut obviously is a high pass filter. The high cut is obviously a low pass filter. And then we have the compression threshold, which by turning this up brings the threshold down. Then we have an attack time knob, and then we have a release time knob. After that, there's a drive, which boosts the gain inside the saturator. And next is limit, which boosts the gain inside the limiter. And last, the volume controls the gain of the utility. The best part about having all of these knobs already mapped out is that when I load up this rack on a new track, it automatically populates my push so I can immediately touch the knobs and affect any one of these parameters. And speaking of knobs, there's even more to this rack, so let me show you. On the left side of this audio rack, if you click this plus button, it'll bring up more knobs. So I'll load all of them in, which gives us a total of 16 knobs. So now the original 8 knobs we were looking at are in this top row, and all of these new knobs are down in this bottom row. And this gives us even more parameters to really get in there and fine tune our sound. So let's look at what these knobs do. First, you'll notice I color coded everything so that you have the low cut as red and the low shelf as red. That helps my eyes know which parameters are similar. So the low shelf knob obviously cuts or boosts the low frequencies. High shelf either boosts or cuts the high frequencies. Then this comp dry wet is for the dry wet of the compressor. This is really helpful if I want to do something like parallel compression instead of just totally compressing the sound. Next is the dry wet for the saturator. And then these last 4 knobs, which are white, correspond to the utility. So the bass mono knob is just an on-off switch for the bass mono parameter inside of the utility. The next knob is titled width, but it's really just about going from stereo to mono. So the way I've mapped this is that the width corresponds to the width of the utility, but it only goes from 100%, which means totally stereo, down to 0%, which means totally mono. I personally like to have the ability to automate from my full stereo width down to my mono. So instead of just clicking on and off the mono button, this gives me granular ability to actually automate that down and then snap it back up if that's something I want to do. Next up is pan, which is obviously just our pan controls. And the final knob is mute, which is just an on-off switch for the mute on the utility. So once you get this downloaded, if you want to change the way that the default view looks when you first load up the rack, for instance, let's say you want to see all 16 of these knobs and you want this EQ to live down here inside of the regular EQ window, then now that I've made these changes, I just hit this little save icon in the top right section here, click copy. It brings up the window where it's going to save it. I'll hit enter and then say, yes, it's okay to overwrite it. And now anytime I load up a new track and put this rack on that new track, it's going to look exactly like this. Oh yeah, and I have one more bonus tip for you. But first, a word from today's sponsor, the Imagination Accelerator, a 5-module course exclusively designed for artists, musicians, producers, and performers to unlock creativity, overcome burnout, and perform with confidence. Created by me. I've condensed a decade's worth of knowledge and experience of working with artists like Rihanna, Eminem, and Cashmere into a step-by-step course to break through creative blocks, rewire your subconscious mind, and tap into your innate creativity. To date, I have never accepted any sponsorship money on this channel. So if this course sounds intriguing to you, help support my channel by going to imaginationaccelerator.com. The first 10 people to use the coupon code YouTube200 will receive a $200 discount. Are you ready to transform your artistic journey? Everything starts with imagination. Watch the trailer particular video at imaginationaccelerator.com to learn more. And now back to the bonus tip. If you want to save even more time by creating a new track and not having to load this Launchpad rack every time you create a new track, you can actually set this to be the default rack that loads up with every new track. So right now, when I hit Command T, I load up a new audio track, but there's no audio effects in there. So let's load up the Launchpad, hit Command F, type in Launchpad, load this up onto this track. And the cool thing is I can change the view of this to be custom to a new track. So if I want to expand this EQ window, minimize the EQ here, and maybe just limit my knobs back to only 8 knobs, and maybe resize this window just a little bit. Now I can click on my track where it says To Audio, right click on it, and down at the bottom of this menu, you see Save as Default Audio Track. When I click that, it brings up this window, are you sure? And I just say yes. And now when I go to load up a new audio track by hitting Command T, it's already there and looks exactly the same as the previous track. There's one more catch. If you want to do this for your MIDI tracks, you got to do that separately. So right now, if I load up a new MIDI track by hitting Command-Shift-T, you'll see there's no instruments or audio racks in here. So I'm going to click on my previous audio track, click on the Launchpad, hit Command-C for copy, go back to my MIDI, click down in here and hit Command-V to paste it in. And now to save this as my default, I right-click on the MIDI track, I go down to the bottom, Save as Default MIDI Track, click that and say, yes, I want to overwrite it. This is now going to be my default MIDI track. And so now whatever you load up, whether it's a new audio track or a new MIDI track, you got this audio rack ready to go. Again, your free download link is in the description below. And if you want another free download, check out this video right here. Or the YouTube algorithm thinks you might enjoy this video as well.